Hey there, we're Katelyn and Michael. We have been working together in business for over 8 years, and we've realized that there are two different mindsets when it comes to business and the way we view our business that can really determine whether or not we're thriving or not. So we're going to share about that, and in hopes that you can decide which mindset you're in. Hey there, I'm Katelyn. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is a place where we love to empower photographers to build profitable and purposeful businesses while also letting them into the behind the scenes of our everyday life. This is my husband, Michael.
Hello, hello.
We've been working together since 2013.
Yep.
And we realized over the course of several years of working together that
Several arguments,
several struggles, that a lot of our arguments actually are stemming from the fact that he has a completely different mindset about our business than I do. And his is not wrong, mine is not wrong, but we have aspects of both mindsets where if it's taken to the extreme, it can be really detrimental. So when it comes to our different mindsets about business, I am glass half empty, he's glass half full. And always. And we're going to explain from each other's perspective how we would define how that comes across in day-to-day business life. So why don't you explain how you experience me in business in our day-to-day work life?
From a glass half empty perspective, Katelyn typically seems stressed, worried, concerned about the future.
But that's my default.
Yes, and knowing that the business is going to fail at any moment, and I frequently have to walk her back from the ledge.
Okay.
How do you experience me in business?
I experience Michael in business to be like, it's fine, everything's fine. You don't need to worry about that. You don't need to be concerned about that. It's all gonna work out.
Is it true? Has it worked out?
It's in my mind, I think it's worked out because someone's freaking out about it. Like my freak out makes it work out.
Get that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, my freak out makes it work out.
We're going to start selling those.
So it's easy for me to realize and call out the negative aspects that I see, the cons, if you will, but the pros of Katelyn's perspective is that we are constantly innovating. We are constantly assessing how things are going, really tracking our numbers and how things are working out and what's not working, and maybe we need to shift this, maybe we need to try this.
So we're not settling. From my perspective, I'm not settling for the status quo. We're always moving forward.
And my perspective, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So those are the positives about the way I'm wired. The positives about the way Michael is wired and his mindset on
let's
business.
Start with my positives.
Yeah.
Because it's such a long list.
Because he is so okay with status quo, and you are easily
status quo.
Okay, because you're okay.
The positive, not the negative.
That's not negative, but he does not stress about the future, and he has full confidence that the future is bright. It's going to be great, and we don't need to spend our days living a stressful work environment. Thinking about the future, like it's going to be just fine. And that is his perspective, which allows me in a lot of ways, like let's say we have a big win in our business. I will say like, oh, that's great. And I immediately think it's never going to happen again. And I know that seems so negative, but in my mind, it's like, well, I think that way because if I think it's not going to happen again, I'm going to innovate a way to make it happen again. And so I think of it as a positive, but really, what I've realized from Michael and other team members is that being willing to stop and celebrate what you've done is really important for team morale and for your own sense of accomplishment and to avoid burnout. So I've got to be able to stop, kind of like, and Michael's really good about this. So is Emily, another team member, my sister. They're really great at celebrating what has happened that's gone really, really well. Whereas for me, I have a hard time focusing on what we've done well. And that's because I have a little bit of perfectionist in me, and I do see I see things glass half empty. So what we've learned is that there are pros and cons of both. How can we take these and actually work together to be a great team? When we first started realizing when we're working in business, in my perspective, and maybe you viewed it this way, I'm not sure, but I viewed it as like we're incompatible. Like the way you think about business and the way I think about business cannot work together.
Yeah, there were multiple times where it's like, I should just go find another job. Like you're just constantly mad at me or disappointed that I don't have a checklist or I don't do things the way you do things.
Or like you see me trying to innovate and sometimes get annoyed with that, like, well, it's fine the way it is. And I'm like, you don't appreciate my drivenness,
Katelyn has called herself, can I say this?
I don't know what you're going to say.
The Dream Factory. That she is the creative where all great ideas come from, which is majority
Is it
true.
wrong?
It's not wrong. No, I'm not saying it's wrong, but in her dream factory-ness, there is some I love that idea. We have a lot going on right now. Is that really necessary to do? I'm also a realist, logical thinker. Like, we're fine. Like, here's the reasons why we're fine. And
What my encouragement is for you is that I think that everyone falls into the category of either being glass half empty or glass half full. And so because I am someone who naturally tends towards the glass being half empty, if you are like that, you're like me, I would highly recommend that every time that you do something big or have a win, that you document it, that you write it down. I think you can always say in your head, like, oh, I'm grateful for it. But I think maybe you should take an action step and make it a tradition in your business. Whenever there is a win, that you find a way to save it, share it, do something to celebrate it. Don't just say you're going to celebrate it, because you can say that all you want, but if you don't actually have a pattern or an action step that you do to actually, maybe it's literally just texting your best friend, but you're doing something to take a win and make yourself stop and celebrate it, instead of thinking, well, this person booked me, and that's a win, but I don't know if these other 2 inquiries are going to book. That is deflecting from the win and defaulting back to glass half empty. And that can be really damaging over time. And you can easily just kind of find yourself leaning into burnout because you are never, ever satisfied or excited about what you've accomplished in your business.
I think a great example of this, kind of on a small scale, like you were just talking about bookings, I thought you were talking about like launching a product. Like, that is just this big thing, and we do try to celebrate that big. But even just getting through a wedding day, we kind of got in the pattern of, if it's not too late of a wedding night, like we would go and get Wendy's Frosties, like, oh, we survived another one, like,
We did it.
let's celebrate.
Right.
And, we would be in the car and Katelyn would kind of start going through like, well, this was a struggle and this wasn't the best part of the day, and I hope I got something during, the reception, like things like that, just kind of talking what I view as, negative talk. I'm like, oh my gosh, today was awesome. Like, we did it. Like, the wedding is done, and Katelyn just kind of looks towards the glass half
What could be
empty.
better.
Yes, which is helpful, but
Yeah.
to celebrate that is a way that we kind of get in on that together.
Yeah, and something else that I would recommend for someone who sees things glass half empty, like I do, to train yourself that before you dive into what could be better, you choose to stop yourself and recognize when you're falling into that pattern and do something else with gratitude beforehand. So for example, and if you're working with someone who's a glass half full, you need to do this for them so they don't resent you. So like if Michael shot something at a setting that I think should be different, I think it helps him a lot for me to talk about what went really well and for me to recognize and be grateful and excited about what we did great as a team together before I ever mention something that could be better. Because if I don't think about it from that context, then it's just automatically like, oh, she's being negative again.
Yeah.
Some funny story that happened recently, we were in our team meeting and I was sitting there and we're talking about some recent numbers and something that happened. And I said something to Michael and my sister and my sister-in-law on Zoom. I said something like, guys, think about this year. Like, it was a pandemic. 2 of our team members have been like pregnant. Like, it's been a crazy year, but we've still done this, this, and this. And everyone paused and said, look at Miss Positivity, because I don't ever take time to see things through that lens. I'm always constantly trying to figure out what's going to be next. And I have found that a key indicator that I'm not healthy in business is when I start to get frustrated and angry and upset with myself or other team members or just where we are. When really we have so much to celebrate. And so maybe just figuring out what your indicator is. Like, what is your line in the sand when you have to recognize and train yourself like, oh, shoot, I gotta pause and take a step back, because everything I'm thinking about in business is that it's not enough. It's not good enough. I'm not doing anything well. I'm comparing myself. And so I've really had to teach myself, when am I falling into those patterns and what can I do? What can I implement as far as a pattern or a habit to make myself realize it's not all negative, and we don't always have to build upon something new. There's things to celebrate right now without me taking any further action.
So if you're a glass half full person like me, there are lessons that can be learned from a glass half empty person as well. You know, for me personally, there is a level of responsibility and making things fun that I like to bring into the team, and we try really hard to do things together, and a lot of that is because of the way that I'm wired. And so, you know, we have separate offices, but a lot of times we'll all work in the same room just because I like that energy and kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. There are some times where Katelyn's like, you know, we can't do that, like we don't have the time to do that, or this is the way we need to do that, kind of coming from a glass half empty perspective and trying to help her realize, you know, what could this look like in a different situation. And
I feel like what you're saying is you've gotten better at easing the glass half full mentality into a glass half empty person. Like you don't push your mentality on me. You kind of like ease into like showing that perspective, but not in a way that makes me feel wrong.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
yeah, and I think the biggest takeaway that we've learned is the idea of empathy and putting ourselves in the other person's shoe. Like, how is she viewing this situation? How am I viewing this situation? You know, if she's not wrong in the way she's viewing it, and I'm not necessarily wrong in the way I'm viewing it, understanding. And that's where a big part of our communication comes into play, of like, for her to say something that I view as negative and me saying, hey, I hear what you're saying and I completely understand why you feel that way, but here are some other ways that you could potentially look at it. You know, do you think that those are possible? Like, do you think this was a success, even though it may not have been as big of a success as we wanted, or you didn't get exactly what you wanted on the wedding day or thing?
I think also something that I've noticed for Michael, as you've grown in this whole relationship of two different business mindsets, is that you've also found a way to see the way that I'm wired and to kind of be, instead of it being like off-putting, like you don't like that part of me, respecting it instead of just pushing it away. And learning from it. So it used to be that this part of our work relationship is what was the root of all of our problems. Right. So he viewed me fussing about not getting something done on time as being really overbearing, whereas now I feel like
it's like, calm down, we work for ourselves. Like,
we can do whatever we want.
We're the ones that set this deadline. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, it'll be fine if it gets done next week.
And I view that as he just does whatever the heck he wants because he doesn't worry about anything. And so what we've realized is that when you can get rid of those judgments and those harsh ways of viewing each other, and you can see that there is actually good in his chillness, and there is actually good in my intensity, there can be a beautiful marriage of the two.
Yes.
It's hard to get there, but it is possible. So as we kind of close out this episode, I think it's encouraging, maybe a first step or an action item for those of you who know that something needs to happen with you and your mindset and business. A great resource would be to find a good trusted friend or a business mentor, someone that you can talk to that can either help you realize like, hey, you know, like maybe you can be a little bit more aware, or like push you to try something new, to push yourself. Like that would be what Michael would need. Whereas I would need someone to hear me talk about business and say, you know what, I think let's take a step back and realize like you did great with this. And you don't have to keep pushing yourself to the point of going crazy, trying to be so productive. Like it's really helpful to have someone with a third-party view. So anyway, we hope this is helpful because ultimately, working in business, whether you're on your own, this still affects you even if you're not a husband and wife team. Yeah. Everyone is wired to view their business and their mindset in a different way. And so I hope that by just hearing our very polarizing different examples will help you realize maybe where you stand, and will help you recognize, okay, this is why things seem so overwhelming to me. I hope this gives you maybe just a perspective that you are normal, but there are action steps that you can take to make your business, that business health and your mental health in business a little bit healthier. So
we hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those in the section below. Like and subscribe to be alerted for future videos, and we'll see you next time.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.